Now, neither Michael nor Doug can attend tonight, so they're not coming. But we do have quorum. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that counting me? I think it's 5 without me, 6 with me. So I'll call the meeting to order. It's 7:03, and CSEC meeting is now called to order. Good to see you, Bob. Thanks,
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Welcome back. Welcome back to the US of A.
I'm only here for a couple of weeks, unfortunately. I'm heading back for a few more months.
Wow.
So in a little bit, we'll have to get a quick report of what you've been up to. Okay, let's jump into the minutes. Karen, you want to take over?
Sure. I only had one correction. That was from you on the URL for the Cool City .earth. I guess not coolcity.org. I don't know if anyone else has any corrections to the minutes before we vote on them.
I do not have any corrections.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes as amended with the couple of minor changes that Karen made.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any seconds? Anyone opposed to confirming the minutes? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. That was easy. All right. I've got a few comments to make from the chair's position. I guess the main one is that I've been involved in a number of discussions around the CMS PV. The hearing that was held at the time of our meeting last month, I think for the school went mostly well, but there was a lot of concerns about some projected cost figures presented by Cmlp. I got quite a bit of feedback about that. Amanda and I have discussed that. I've provided some feedback to Dave Wood and Wendy Ravelli, the chair of Cmlp, and they've apparently gotten quite a bit of feedback from other folks themselves. In general, there are two types of concern with PV at CMS. One is that it appears questionable to what extent the town is actually committed to it right now. And secondly, what it might cost. So on the latter topic, what it might cost, that will be addressed, I believe, by Cmlp asking for quotes once the building is approved at special town meeting in a week. Dave Wood has said he's holding off to do any more work on that until the project is formally approved. And at that point, he'll get some actual quotes. Well, it remains to be seen exactly how soon. But the second issue is how much will it cost and how will it be paid for by the town? And that's up in the air. And depending on how that goes, we may or may not get PV on CMS. I don't know, Amanda, do you want to add anything to those comments?
I guess my comments were maybe more optimistic. I thought the light board meeting went really well yesterday. I thought there, to me, was a strong commitment from the light board that the solar would move forward, and that if all goes well, it would move forward in alignment with the building of the school, and that it would be there when the doors opened, pending supply chains town meeting votes and all of the other things that are out of the light board's control. And I think it's true that the financing and how that all will shake out is dependent upon the size and the mechanics of the finances at the time, the rebates, incentives, and all of that changes all the time. But I left that meeting feeling much more secure in what the future of the solar was than I did before the meeting, because in that meeting, we also heard from Dave Wood that the funding for the design and the financial assessment is available, which I thought was also a good indication that that would move forward quickly. So I came away from that meeting a little bit different, I guess.
Well, I agree it was a very good meeting. I think what I'm referring to is that if the town chooses to finance it, let me rephrase it. If CMLP proposes that this be, that they own the arrays and that it be financed through a bond offering, I'm hearing concern around the town that that bond offering might not get approved. Now, if the PV is set up as a PPA, then the town does not need to formally vote on that. That's all within the aegis of CMLP. So at least amongst greenies, there's nervousness about what will happen if we have to go to town to ask for money to fund this. So I think that's where our different perspectives on that meeting may come from.
So the bond offering would have to go back to town meeting.
Right. That's
Why
right.
is it so dysfunctional? I don't get that. I don't get why it is so dysfunctional. Why is it it looks like two parties in the town are working against each other.
So can I, since
Please, because I don't know how to answer that
Select
one.
board liaison, also select board liaison to the municipal light board and to the middle school building committee. And I have to take exception that I don't think that the parties are working against each other. I think that each party is doing the part that they're responsible for, and that, you know, the middle school building committee's responsibility under the town meeting's direction has been to build a net zero ready building, and they are doing that. And then meanwhile, the municipal light board has taken a responsibility and has, I think, made a commitment that they reiterated yesterday to provide solar on that site. And, you know, now the scope of the solar, the way that it gets paid for, how, you know, it gets transmitted to either to the building itself or to other places, all of those things are yet to be determined, but there are many options. And there was a very strong commitment, at least to the level of putting enough PV, and that, you know, and actually just with rooftop PV, they said yesterday they could achieve enough to cover the building's power requirements, that, you know, that level of commitment was already made, and that there is an opportunity, of course, to have a much larger installation on the site. But the thing is that none of these decisions have to be made yet. All, you know, because it takes a lot less time to build a PV than it does to build a building. And so that's a natural situation that we're in right now, is that no, all those decisions haven't been made, and it's not appropriate to make them yet. And they're just going to be clear about reiterating their commitment and the options that are possible.
Well, Matt, I mean, I hear you, but it doesn't jive. No one will ever understand that. It's like building a car, but guess what? You can't buy a gas to run it, right? I mean, how does that work? The tax levy now, after the school is built, assuming it's approved, is going to be 10% just for payment of the bond. And then comes on top of that now, whatever energy we need to run the school.
But
I
the
mean, that's
town
sort of-
has, for example, already in the past, installed solar arrays on other sites, right? The
But you need to have a
former
bond.
Gray site on
You need
the,
to have a bond to fund that solar array, right? I mean, that's what's being proposed right now.
So it's not being proposed,
No.
and the
But
site on the
We're gonna end up,
landfill.
we're gonna vote on the school passes, and then comes back, okay, now we need to decide another decision about whether we're going to add PV or not, and that will require a bond to build.
why?
Because that's one of the options on the table, unless you say suddenly by miracle, we all agree it's gonna be PPA.
Why is that a miracle?
That's what I'm hearing, right? I mean, that's really what I'm hearing right now.
Well, so let me add a couple things. So Matt, a little bit more background information. There are other ways to do this. For example, Belmont, I understand, is funding the PV for their school as part of the whole building arrangement.
Yeah.
It's not separated. So there are other ways. Now, this project has been on the net zero ready path for a while, so that's not really a debatable point. We are where we are. However, and my memory didn't stretch back this far, but a lot of the angst apparently comes from historical situations in town where the high school was supposed to have PV on it, but my understanding is that was value engineered out. Maybe someone who is familiar with that can comment on that. I also understand that at least at one point in time, there were plans to put PV on BD, but they never materialized. So I think there is some skepticism in town based on some history. Maybe it's an incomplete history or an imperfect history, but there's some history that says, well, we want this stuff, but we haven't gotten it yet. And so the apparent lack of progress on this concerns people. Now, maybe, there is progress and CMLP is just not reporting much on it, but there is concern about apparent lack of progress.
I mean, the commitments at BD and the high school, I don't think were anywhere near as explicit as they are for this project. That's been part of the plan from day one. So it's not the kind of thing that's getting value engineered out.
Yeah, because it's not part of the school project. And, that's a clear separation. Whether that separation is the right thing or the wrong thing is another story. But again, we are where we are, and they're separate projects. So the next week, the town will vote on the school. And subsequently, at some point in time, the town will either explicitly or implicitly make a decision about solar at middle school. Explicitly if it involves a bond, implicitly if CMLP goes for a PPA. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I think our conversation here is reflective of other conversations that are going on amongst concerned folks in town about PV. I'll also add that this concern manifests, or not manifests, but is in part driven by a target in the sustainability plan that says we should have 20 megawatts of PV on municipal buildings by 2030. We're currently at 8.
Yeah.
So we need to add about 12 megawatts in 8 years. It's roughly 1.5 megawatts per year. And at the moment, the only thing that appears lined up, and that lineup again is perceived to be tenuous, is the middle school. So as a community, particularly as a sustainable community, somehow we've got to lean into or put more effort into ensuring that we make that target of 20 megawatts by 2030. And there hasn't apparently been much effort yet. Okay, hopefully we've beaten that one to death. Although, like a zombie, I'm sure it'll come back. Separately,
Here, it looks like Sharon's raising her hand. I don't know
oh,
if you
I'm
have the
sorry.
full-
Sharon, please.
Point of order, Janet, can you put your full name? I think for the public meetings, we should have our full names.
Thank you. Separate topic altogether, kind of an interesting one. Speaking with Janice Setti today, she received a question she had never received before, and that is, what is the relative efficiency of induction cooking versus conduction cooking? And she didn't have an answer. She wondered if I did, and I did not. I bring it up here in case anyone would care to dig into that.
I looked at it about 30 years ago.
Oh, well, you're ahead of everybody then.
I don't know if I have it. Brad, it looks like Brad wants to say something.
I think it's quite a lot in efficiency for the power burned in your house. Of course, I think it's like 40 to nearly 100% efficiency boost. Of course, you have to deal with the fact that your electricity is natural gas produced. So I don't think of it as an efficiency boost as much as may lower your greenhouse gas.
Okay, I think actually I didn't give the full picture. It was the comparison between electric conduction versus induction, not gas versus induction.
Yeah, well, Brad's point still stands, because if your electricity, only about half of our electricity is being generated sustainably. So, but I also, from my
But that's the same as air source heat pump, right? I mean, it's the same discussion. I
right,
think just
right.
standalone, right? Apples to apples. I think
Right, they're both
induction is
electric.
more efficient than the other method.
And I think it probably is, working from very old memory, if you do a water boil test where you you weigh
Yeah.
the amount of water and you measure how much power it takes to boil a measured amount of weight of water. There's a lot of things that impact that efficiency with how well the pot sits on the stove. The glass tops are probably very much improved if you have decent pans compared to the coils where I mean, I know my pans used to shake and then you're not getting good surface contact. But I think generally you're looking at something on the order of 40%, maybe 30, maybe 50 with a glass cooktop, just kind of guessing there. And with induction, you're pretty close to 100, because that's kind of like a microwave. All of the energy is going to be useful.
So Sharon, would you like to give Jan a call? And
I don't know if I can find anything that's current, but but sure, yeah.
at least your description makes sense, and I think that'll be more than Jan's got.
Okay.
Great, thanks. I think that's about it for my updates. Amanda, you want to move to? Oh,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention, I did find a study a couple of weeks ago, because I was looking up the same issue, that concluded that actually conduction and induction based electric ranges have about the same efficiency, but the caveat, and a pretty strong caveat, is that the size of the burner needs to match exactly the size of the pot, so there's actually not a big difference there in efficiency, but as a practical matter, the efficiency is quite a bit higher when you use an induction range. But I have to say, the study that I read seemed pretty terribly biased in other respects against induction. I don't know who the organization that wrote it was funded by, but I'll try to track that document down and send it out.
great, thanks.
Jan has one. Do you want to comment? You're on mute.
Yeah, go ahead, Jan. How come I didn't see that? Oh, now I see you. Yeah.
I think the big difference is in induction really heats the pan and the food. It doesn't heat the cooktop. And so you can almost put your hand, after you've finished cooking, you can pretty much touch the, where the pan has been without burning yourself. I mean, it takes a few seconds to cool down enough to actually touch it, but there's much less wasted heat than compared with conduction, which really, heats up those elements, and the elements heat up your pan and your food.
The demonstrators like to put a dollar bill between the pan and the cooktop and show that it doesn't burn.
Yeah, I mean, I had a sticker on the base of a pan, a new pan that I bought, and it never burned. It stayed there until I finally removed it. So, no, it doesn't burn, and nothing burns on the cooktop either. So it's so easy to clean.
Yeah.
That's not energy. I mean, that's personal energy, but not electrical energy.
Matt, do you have another comment? Okay, your hand was still up. That's why I was commenting. Okay. All right, why don't we move to the director's update. Amanda?
Yeah, I'm just going to make mine very quick to say that I last month had started this and sent it around the director's update as like a written document. And I'm going to continue to do that. And so if you have feedback on that, feel free to send it to me via email. In future months, it will be ready to, well, Kate Hanley, my predecessor, always posted them on CAB's website. And since all of them currently live there, that's where I've put the two that I've done. CAB's meetings are typically before C6, not this time because we are meeting early because of special town meeting. And so that will always be like a place to look for it. I can send it out to the group before our meetings, but it just for the public, if people were looking for an update, go to CAB's website at the bottom of the page, there's director updates. And I think that will sort of help from me taking up too much of the meeting on just, basic projects that I'm working on that are ongoing, that will always be there. And then I'll try to bring a few tidbits or things that feel the most important to the meetings. And so that's kind of how I'll be operating, but open to feedback on that. And I'm sad to have Brad officially step down from CSEC, but also an opportunity to potentially add a member to CSEC. And so if you have anyone interested in joining the committee, encourage them to fill out a green card or an interest form to join committee. There's also openings on CAB. And so I have been planning to put a posting in the newsletter that I send out maybe monthly. Kate was trying to do it monthly. I don't know that she exactly had enough content every month, but if we do, I'll send something out and I'll put a call for members in that. And then prior to next meeting, I can take a look and coordinate with Jerry on sort of next steps there. So again, if you know someone, encourage them to apply and indicate which committee they're interested in. And hopefully we can add some more volunteer power here.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. And that actually reminds me, last meeting when Brad announced that he was stepping down, I neglected to point out Brad's long service to CSEC. I think everyone knows it, but I just want to sort of publicly and very openly acknowledge that and thank you, Brad, for everything you've done for CSEC and the town. And I'm counting on you to continue. Even though you're not formally on CSEC. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I have to say, this has been a great experience for me. Totally set me on the path I'm on.
Fantastic. Well, you can lead us on that path. Okay, let's see. Next item up is the sustainability series. So let me share a file, my usual PowerPoint. Hang on a second here. Shouldn't say usual, but PowerPoint I've been using. Let's see. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. So I just want to give a brief summary of where we're at with a number of things, and then we'll push into detail on individual events. So basically, this is the description that I presented before. It's pretty much the same as before. The only difference here is really, here where I'm making explicit who's putting this out. As you'll see, Concord Library is keen to work with us on this. Mothers Out Front, possibly too. That's less certain, but the library is clear that they want to work with us. So I'll get into that in a little bit. This is the way the event list is shaping up. There, at the moment, 7 possibilities. 1 or 2 of these might drop out, but this is where we're at now. I think we've talked about certainly these 4. Since the last meeting, what's come up is that here, the EV working group seems very interested in doing an event with us, something around EV charging and or range anxiety. Janet can speak a little bit to that in a moment. This one, plant a native seedling. I think this was briefly mentioned before, but I can go into more detail. This was a very popular event at the library last spring. They're looking to do it again this year and would like to do it with us. And then lastly, this one is pretty iffy right now. I had a fairly long conversation today with Gilda at Mothers Out Front. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do as part of an electrification campaign. It may or may not turn out to have anything that we could do together. But as an overview, this is the way things are shaping up. And so what I'd like to do now is step through these pretty much one by one. Brad, you had your hand up and took it down?
Oh, yeah. Well, I did. Am I muted? That heat pump event, I do want to mention that our group, the Heat Smart Alliance, does these events and in different communities, and would welcome the chance to do that probably here. So it wouldn't be something you'd have, CTEC would have to plan if you wanted to have an event, in some time frame.
So that's a great input, because since our last meeting, as I've been thinking about this, or as of our last meeting, I should say, I realized that at that moment, we didn't have anything on EVs. We didn't have anything on heat pumps. And that felt like 2 pretty big holes in our coverage, so to speak. Since then, the EV working group discussed this, I think led by Jan and Amanda, and came up with an idea they seem to be quite energized about. So that one is kind of covered. That is, we have something for EVs. On the heat pumps, it wasn't clear that we were quite, Mothers and CSEC were quite in sync. So it would be great if Heat Smart could present something. So
yeah, it would be easy.
Who should we contact about that?
You could contact me. But I worked directly with Steve Bright and a bunch of people who have been doing these community presentations. Steve's done a lot. Bob Zog, who lives in Carlisle, who we've worked with before on Heat Smart campaign, he could do it. We just have to pick a time.
Yeah, why don't we take that offline? I think Sharon may be interested in working on this too. So why don't the three of us sort of maybe take that offline tomorrow or talk about how we get that rolling?
If I may mention, the Heat Smart Alliance has its monthly meeting tomorrow morning at 7:30. If either you wanted to just watch to figure out what that alliance is, and I just wanted to mention that. I can send you the link or something.
Yeah, please do. I'd like to do that. And then actually tomorrow morning at 9, there's a Concord Heats Electric meeting, right, too? Am I correct? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's at 9. But yeah, if you send me that link, I'll attend. Okay. So I'd like to go through each one of the events and describe where we're at. Janet, can you give us an update on this? I think you're on mute.
Gary has agreed to make a presentation as a webinar. And, as you say, with Q&A, I gave him an outline of what a sustainability series was all about. And, we wanted some thoughts of how climate change would affect New England and Concord, and what the cost of not doing anything was. Anyway, he has agreed to come on April 13th. Haven't asked him for a title yet. And I can certainly talk to him some more about what he wants to say. Tell me what you want me to do, I think is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think that by this time next month, we need a firm title. So probably the key thing is to close with him on not exactly, but the themes that he wants to emphasize and what his title will be.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is one other thing. I know that you ran April 13th by him and he said, yeah, that works. We might want to push that back after school vacation, so it might be 2 weeks. So you probably should check with him, and if the 27th also works. Now,
I can ask him.
Yeah, one of the reasons we might want to move this to to 2 weeks later is the next item. Actually, before I move to the next item, does anyone have any comments or questions on this? Okay.
We know what time? I see that. Is this an evening thing, I'm guessing, or?
I was thinking that. I did not actually ask him for a time, but I think it should be 7 p.m. like all our other meetings, and I can confirm that works with him if you will agree.
Yeah, that's what I was implicitly thinking. So thanks, Amanda, for pointing out that was omitted.
And Janet, I don't know what Carrie would be up for. But we might be able to think of ways to support through some interactive polling or some other interactive online portion of the night, just to kind of keep things, we're back in Zoom world again, and just thinking about people hitting their Zoom wall, and can we add in some more interactive components to that. And I've got a few softwares that I've used before, and maybe you and I could take a look at those, or with Carrie, and see if any of them felt right to him. Is it him or her? I actually don't know. Sorry.
It's a him.
Okay.
And I know him quite well, so I'm happy, if you would like to join me to talk with him, that might be good.
Okay, that sounds good.
If that helps.
I like that idea. That would make it more interesting, I would think, to people. I'm hopeful that the Q&A is attractive and keeps people engaged through the presentation. But if there was some polling, for example, that could be done on, for example, how worried are people, or what's the probability of something occurring, that would make it even more interesting for folks.
And when you talk about interactive features, I'm aware of polling, but is there any other, did you have anything else in mind when you're talking about interactive features?
Yeah, I've been in a few meetings lately where they've used the Google Jamboard, and it's sort of, you can propose questions and then people can write on sticky notes and can reply to things. And it can also be a way for people to interact after the meeting, because they still have the link. And so if they wanted to go through and add questions, it opens it up to, the risk there, someone might post something, so you probably want to monitor it to some degree. Just in the same way that Zoom bombing is a risk, someone could come in and write something on your board. But I have like another thing that I've used will generate a word cloud in real time. And if folks don't know what that is, you can answer a question and then the largest word will appear. And that specific software has a few different types of polling questions. And so there are some things that we might be able to look into and see. It's not much, but at least it keeps you on your toes a little to interact with something.
And see what Kerry's comfortable with too, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Okay, well, maybe
Moderate something like that, I would think. You intended, Amanda, you intended that to be live, or the Jamboard is a live process, right?
Yeah, it is. And you could, I'm sure we've all been to these in person where there's the big boards around the room and you go up and you put your sticky note with what you've written down. It's sort of that in the virtual sense.
Yeah.
okay, I'll be in touch, Amanda. And I
Great.
can I thought you asked me to ask him for April the 13th at the last meeting. So that's why I asked him for that date. But I can certainly ask him if he's, the 2 weeks later as possible.
Yeah, no, I did. That was where my mind was at that time. But
And Jerry, that would be the first event
yeah,
in the series, right? That's April 13th. Okay.
yeah. Now, one of the reasons to possibly move it back it pertains to this second event, which I don't know. this is what Brad proposed last week. I don't know if I've got the appropriate title here, Brad. Cooler
Yeah.
Concord Climate Challenge.
Well, it may be to be decided.
Yeah.
But, yes,
But you had requested, and I think this makes sense, that we do this right after the keynote address.
I'd like that, yes. And I.
Yeah.
let
That makes
me
sense
let
to me. But if we, because of the school vacation dates, if Carrie presents on the 13th, then the natural next time would be about 2 weeks later.
Right. Maybe, yeah.
Otherwise, we could do the keynote on roundabout the 27th and the climate challenge the
Yeah.
28th or 29th or something like that, right on the heels.
That's cool. That's a good idea. So look, I'm very excited about the Kerry Emanuel thing. I took a course with him. He is a brilliant speaker, very inspiring to me in learning about climate. I could tell you what I've been thinking about for the climate challenge, and I've done a lot of talking to people about it. Concord Can is also interested in helping out. And in fact, I learned the historical bit that Concord Can was formed because of this book, which is essentially exactly what this challenge is about. It's basically designed by the same guy, called Low Carbon Diet. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that.
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
Anyway, so what I'm going to describe is based on a model for deep engagement developed by this guy from the Empowerment Institute. And they've been running challenges out in California. I'll just tell you a little bit about it. So there's a foundation that has funded 3 different cities with, I think, $2 million each to run these sustainability challenge. It's some foundation with very deep pockets. And the way they go is, it's not a single event. There's this single event, which would be the World Cafe, would be the start of a little team-based challenge with the people who participated in it. And I think that would be might be at the library. I was going to try to talk to Doug about it. He's been away for a couple of weeks. That World Cafe thing is where the group is divided up into groups of like 6 people. And this could be in person. I'm hoping it's in person, but it also could be, Zoom like this. It can work either way, but I think it's more reasonable in person. Have a motivational speaker, quite short, to speak to the climate emergency, the urgency and need to lower emissions, and describe just very briefly the challenge that we'll outline, and also the desire to get the audience feedback, because this is essentially a pilot. It's a test flight of a model that I hope would work, all through town eventually. A couple of breakout sessions of I think 24 minutes each, where they would be deep listening and all focusing on certain questions like what are your fears for yourself, family, and community around global warming, and what provides you hope that we can successfully address it. So these are very motivational questions to get people engaged, and then a wrap up. So this would not be a technical World Cafe where we would describe heat pumps or something. It's more a motivational thing. And then in the wrap up, we would introduce this challenge, which would be would use the web platform for tracking what people do. Would describe the team approach. The team approach is very important. You work in groups of, like, we have to decide, but like 10 people together to decide what you're going to do and support each other. And then those teams would have meetups on different topics. They would decide the schedule, the topics being, home heating, transportation, possibly project drawdown, stuff like that, for I think 8 to 10 weeks, or 8 to 10 sessions over time. And we would, I would hope a team of, if there were a small number of teams, of one volunteer per team to facilitate those meetups. And I have some ideas of, I know a couple of people who are willing to work on this, because First Parish, I've proposed to do the same thing through the environmental team there. Anyway, that I just threw a lot at you. I'm thinking I want to see how well this can work. It's more than just the World Cafe, but most of it are the teams working on their own. They form at that World Cafe, and a team leader arranges meetups.
So do you imagine that, let me ask you a different way. Who do you imagine would serve as facilitators?
I would love to get a person or two from CSEC. I have a couple people from First Parish that would be doing it. That might be a different cohort. It depends on what kind of time commitment it is, but I think it's not a big time commitment. Do you think that CSEC members would be interested in doing this?
I think so. I'll express my interest, at least at this point. Anyone else want to comment?
It's a nice idea.
Yeah. I have this written down, and I read you a part of what's on here. I should have sent it before the meeting, and I'll send it to you. Well, should have sent it before the meeting.
You want to present it?
Well, I could. Sure.
So
Sure.
I'll stop sharing, and then you can present.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. So this is what I spoke to. It's basically a pilot of this eco-team based challenge, which is essentially what they've been doing in these other cities. Those are much larger, where they have many, many more teams. And I'm also proposing to do the same thing within the First Parish Church community. So those can be would be cohorts to do a World Cafe, and form the teams and see where that goes. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere, but there have been cases where the teams did form and they did incredible stuff. Then let's see, I said most of this. I just heard those ideas about Google Jamboard and word cloud, and I need to learn about this. Those are new technologies. But something like that could be interesting for a meetup if it were online. You want to have people contributing their thoughts to a session. let's see. I pretty much talked through this. The climate challenge is basically seeing if you can get people to commit to try to reduce their footprint by half over a year's time. Could be 3 years' time. And, you know, describing all the different things you can do. And it's a matter of finding out about them and maybe getting help from your neighbors to, you know, support each other. You do it, I'll do it. That's what that team approach is all about. And then we would want to get a lot of feedback. So within this, it wouldn't be just talking at people. It's much more interesting to get audience feedback. Online, it's actually easier to get feedback than it is in person these days with some of the tools. But, you know, seeing whether people would like to join a team, would like to lead a team, perhaps. And how should the teams be formed? Should they be random, or should you be able to choose your team? And then we could start them up on the platform. It has teams. You could get the list of people, put them on there. They can change them as they see fit. And then the team members would basically run their team over a period of weeks, as many weeks as it takes. That's my thought.
I think, you know, we'll obviously need to make that a description like that, or available so folks know what this implies.
Right.
And, you know, I have no idea if the attendance will be paltry or too much to handle.
I don't
But
either.
You know, I think it's I love the idea, largely because of its interactive nature, and it, you know, gets people directly involved. So I think, you know, doing this as a pilot, I think makes great sense. If it crashes, okay, we haven't put that much effort into it.
Yeah.
If it takes off, great. We've got good information about how to accelerate it.
Thank you, Janet.
Just
Janet.
to say that Laura Davis, who is mother, very active in Mothers Out Front, I just wondered whether she had any thoughts whether Mothers Out Front might be involved in this, since you brought up Mothers Out Front in your introduction.
Laura, would you like to comment?
Hello. Janet, was your question about collaboration?
Laura, could you identify yourself, please?
Laura Davis, 330 Garfield Road, sorry. Just to clarify your question, was that involvement in Brad's particular project that he just proposed, or the sustainability series more broadly?
My immediate question was collaborating with Brad's project, but I'm sure you'd be welcome elsewhere. But
we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, Brad and I have been missing each other for about 2 weeks. We've been meaning to chat about this. So I'm not going to speak on that now. I can't represent like the whole of the leadership team as a single person. But if I can address sort of just like interest in collaboration broadly over the sustainability series, I think that there is interest from Mothers Out Front for doing something like this. You know, I know that you've spoken with Gilda, which is great, and I'll catch up with her and find out what's been discussed so far. Gilda heads up the Clean Heat campaign, but there are other groups within our you know, our community group. One natural partnership might be actually the group that does more community engagement. And my question to you, I was going to ask this at the end, was sort of, do you have any plans for, you know, have you considered something that might be a little bit more approachable and family friendly and less sort of educational webinar format oriented, we think a lot about how to bring people in from outside the choir, people who haven't thought about climate change before. Often an educational webinar is not going to be their first step towards making a big change in their life. So a place where we might be interested in collaborating is if you wanted to do something, perhaps some kind of an outdoor event. Like I've been thinking that it would be great to have some kind of a green your block party, sustainability fair, something that would have like an EV petting zoo and a toy swap with the climate action or the Concord Family Network, and like bring in a lot of groups that are not climate groups to do things that are really approachable and fun. And then you can have the green living tour where you go into somebody's house and look at a heat pump and like see induction stove for the first time. And that's where people can start bringing those connections in. So I think that that's a really natural place for Mothers Out Front to be a collaborator, is if you want to do more approachable things to get people in the door. So that's, like I said, I can't speak for like the whole team, but that's personally what I'm very interested in working on. And I know that there are a number of members who I could pull together for a more family-oriented project.
So that sounds great. In general, we haven't talked too much about quote unquote family-oriented events, primarily because primarily because of COVID concerns and expectations that we're probably, maybe I shouldn't say probably, but we're likely to be inside and therefore do everything over on Zoom. But why don't we talk offline soon and see if there's some commonality of something we can pull together. The one caveat I'll say is we'll need to move pretty quickly to make plans because to get all our promotional materials out and get information through the channels about what we're doing, we have to have things solidified mid to end of February, something like that. So let's reach out to each other tomorrow, Monday, something like that, and talk about it. So thanks for those comments. So let's see, where were we? Anything else on for now on the climate challenge? Let me reshare my screen here. Okay, why don't we move on to the next event? I've got these kind of sort of sequenced in, well, yes and no. They're not, the key sequence is the first two, the keynote and then the challenge. Presumably, we're hoping that Carrie motivates people so much that they want to sign up for the challenge right away. Okay, so I'm going to, Doug was going to talk about all this, but he could not make it. But I'm pretty well up to date. So he and I discussed this with Rennie Cunningham at Concord Library, and he's very supportive of this. And they very much want to do things with us, with CSEC. They see us as a promotional channel that will bring more attention to what they are doing. So I think it's fairly copacetic with what we want to do. She seems to be flexible in terms of dates. The plan at the moment is Zoom. Again, with Q&A, it'd be, in my opinion, it'd be a lot better if we could do this in person. But at any rate, I think the next steps here actually, as listed, we need to update the existing presentation materials, and also we need to set the date here. So I'll put that in there. So Doug will be back in about a week or 10 days, and he and I are going to jump on this at that time. But I think this one's pretty straightforward in the sense that we'll work off of the Sustainable Home Now brochure And if you set this up or sort of promote it as an introduction to the things one can do, and hopefully that gets some people started on doing some things for their home, even if they're minor things. Next. This one, so Michael could not make it either. Some family issues arose for him late afternoon today, but he and I talked earlier today. This one is vague right now, but it's very encouraging. Michael has reached out to Concord Business Partnership, as has Amanda. And the initial feedback from this group is, yeah, they want to hear from us. They want to hear, well, I'm not sure what they want to hear. There's going to be a pre-meeting next week to determine what they want to hear. And then I think the way this is slated is we might be on their agenda. No, I guess we meet with them on February 2nd. Is that right, Amanda? Do I have the dates right?
Yeah, so I think we are meeting with them next week to work out a game plan. At a minimum, I'm going to attend their February 2nd meeting, and I think Michael might as well, but I don't know if I heard back from him on that, but I've been just doing a little bit of a roadshow on what is Sustainable Concord and letting people know who I am and introducing myself. So at a minimum, I think that's what the February 22nd meeting will be. And if I know that we've sort of bounced around using that session as a way to ask about what people are interested in and sort of gauge if they wanted to hear more about rebates or how to do something specific or how to, there are some other elements in the Sustainable Concord plan that could relate to businesses, like the energy disclosure or like a Concord business recognition of sustainable businesses and trying to get a feel for what might be helpful for them. So I think there is more to be worked out on this one, but hopefully we will work that out next week.
Right. Yeah. So in talking with Michael, we were both very encouraged by the responses to him and to you. Of course, we haven't really gotten to any meaty topics yet, but it's encouraging at the moment. And what I mentioned to Michael is, if this stuff doesn't fit into the series for whatever reason, then let's not worry about that. Let's make sure that we hit a goal here of opening up communications channels with the business community so that, we can help them understand what options, what possibilities there are for them in town currently, and then move on to hopefully brainstorming what we could do together. Just kind of very much an open book. So this is one, I don't know if we'll know enough in a month or 5 or 6 weeks to actually put this on our program. But nonetheless, so far it's been encouraging. Bob, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question about whether this category of business applies to commercial industrial property or just like the businesses in the downtown area. And I was wondering in the past year if anything's been resolved on the distribution constraints to getting commercial industrial properties have the ability to put PV on their roofs.
Right. So to the last question, nothing has been resolved. There still are constraints in town through CMLP because of minimum loads. So in terms of businesses adopting PV, yeah, that's a limitation. On your first question, I don't know the makeup of the Concord Business Partnership, if it's open to any business in Concord or if it's only certain businesses. it's kind of interesting. I was talking with Gilda earlier today, and apparently there was a very interesting presentation in Lexington not too long ago by someone from the real estate community. And it apparently generated a lot of interest, and it made me wonder, are realtors involved in this partnership, this Concord Business Partnership, or not? If not, they may be a separate group that we may want to attempt to address at some point. Brad?
Just one, I know that realtor that presented to them. If you ever felt like wanted to arrange someone, this is someone who teaches, he works with real estate agents on teaching sustainability, and would be a good speaker, or make a good event in itself.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit offline about that and see if we can establish, or at least if I can establish a connection with him. Matt?
I just wanted to note that the Concord Business Partnership tends to have commercial property owners as members. It's not exclusively that, but that is, the focus of the membership. And then there are realtors and others that are engaged there as well. Real estate attorneys, all that. Yeah, there is, the thing is that when you're talking about PV, for example, that you're likely to find most of the commercial local property owners there more than anywhere else.
Got it. Thanks for that insight. Okay, moving along. The next one here is an EV-oriented event with the EV working group. I made up this title because my understanding was the discussion that the EV working group had about a potential event sort of revolved around range anxiety, but I wasn't there. Janet, you were.
Yeah, yes, I was at that meeting, and we talked about more things than that. First of all, I thought there was likely to be cars, more cars available, and that a Arrive and Drive event would be possible in the fall. And apart from that, was quite a lot of discussion about charging. And then the discussion sort of morphed into an online event, really, talking about how easy it is to charge at home, and teaching people the basics of charging and driving an EV, winter tips on winter driving, and then charging away from home, charging on long trips, and how to find the charging stations you need, how fast they charge, what's the real range of your car when you're traveling at highway speeds, and then how does that change during winter, and some tips on winter driving, like warming up your car before you leave and things like that. And then just reading my notes here, sorry. That was the main part. We also talked about walking people through trip planning for long trips, and using with help of a laptop and various apps, but that would be more of a one-on-one, I think. And then talked about a game. I have a virtual bingo game saying, with various things that you could check off, like I've charged this station, I've been on a trip for over 200 miles, things like that. So that was the basis of the discussion.
Might be interesting to use a polling feature during a presentation to implement that kind of game. It would be interesting to see, for example, how many people have gone on a trip for over 200 miles with an EV? How many people?
Yeah, and I think from memory, the bingo card was also something, I think I've said this a few times, but pushing the boundaries on the definition of what an event is. And if we created a bingo card that turned into, in some ways, another way for people to stay connected outside of a meeting. And so you take your bingo card and maybe you have to take a photo and post it with crossing it off on the bingo card, or somehow working with your friends in order to cross off your bingo card even beyond an event. And I think Kim Slack's also going to be working on an EV in the wild social media campaign. So if you have an EV and you would be up for letting us use your photo near like a monument or some sort of recognizable space in Concord, let me know and I'll get you in contact with Kim.
So sounds like there's lots of ideas here for sure, interesting ones. I think the next step, Janet, is to flesh out some of those details and decide on a title, roughly, by mid-February. We can talk about that, if you want, but I think you've got a lot of raw material there. And I think it sounds like it's really up to the EV working group, which of these they want to bite off. And we could help them with that. Bob, I see you've got your hands up.
Yeah, I agree. This is to me a very dynamic topic because we have so many auto manufacturers about to introduce new products that are claiming to do some amazing things, like the Ford F-150. People are saying it's going to be able to power your home. So that's another question. Has there been any progress in the town about implementing smart meters to do vehicle to grid? Because I know that's coming in certain parts of the country. I know in California, I believe they're doing that. People who own these EVs, we don't need to get a Tesla Powerwall because we kind of have one sitting in our garage. If CMLP makes some progress that allows us to backfeed our houses.
Well, and the school and CMLP are talking about doing something like that with electric buses in future.
Is that the middle school is going to be doing that? That's one other question I had. Is anything about electric buses tied to the middle school?
Not specifically as far as I know. But to your question, has CMLP made any progress? They have. They've hired a consultant to develop an RFQ. They held a public hearing on this. I don't know if that's November or December. I'm not sure. I think the RFQ either has gone out or will go out shortly. So it seems to me that we're on the way.
That's good. That's excellent. That's excellent to hear.
Yeah,
It's progress. That's what we need.
it's definite progress. Yeah, so Janet, I think the key things here are, let's figure out with the EV working group what they want to do, and see if we can't nail that down in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so what they want to do and when they want to do it.
Pretty
Was
much.
Whether the ride and drive event they thought would be better in the fall when there's probably more cars available. And would the other event be better closer to that or separated? I'm thinking it would be better to be in some proximity.
Yeah, so what I think Jan suggested, based on the discussion that the working group had, was that it would be good to have this charging topic, this charging event, perhaps sometime in June, so that folks who are contemplating some sort of summer trip with an EV could get information and be prepared for that because of this event. So that's why I put here early June. There's nothing magic about that, but it's just reflective of what I heard from Janicetti.
Okay.
Hanny?
Yeah, it's just a sort of a scheduling or planning question. Were you intending to have all of the series defined by the time you go out and publicize it, or it's just you have a few at a time,
I was thinking we will have them all defined.
including ones that go down to the fall?
Potentially, but unlikely.
Yeah, okay.
I think we'll have plenty to do with just spring-oriented events. And further, there's more uncertainty about planning something out into the fall.
Mhm.
I know that Jan expressed some interest in having some events in the fall. But I want to make sure as much as possible, we don't bite off more than we can chew. So I think we'll have quite a bit of work to do individually and as a committee together in February and March, getting everything set up and nailed down.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if we use the Cooler Concord site to promote that, that's easy to update. But if you use any other means of promoting, then it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Right, exactly. And actually, in a minute, I'd like you to comment on the Cooler Concord portion. But let me work through a couple more of these.
Sure.
I just want to add one or ask a question. There are some very practical electric bicycles out there which are really meant for transportation. We promote them in some way. I don't know whether at the Ride and Drive event may be the best time. What do you think?
Well, my initial reaction is that's a horse of another color. I haven't thought about it at all, but I just see them as very, very different things serving very different purposes. I mean, I do know people use e-bikes for commuting. But I think it would attract a different audience. An electric bike event alone would be interesting. But I don't see it
Jerry,
really being effectively promoted with EVs.
Jerry, that's the reason you want to do them at the same time, that they attract a different audience. And the electric motorcycles that were at the last Ride and Drive event were one of the most interested. People were more interested in that than a lot of the cars.
They're more affordable.
I know Laura has a electric cargo bike, so I think she has something to say about it. She has a hand raised.
Okay, I missed that. Go ahead, Laura.
Laura Davis, 330 Garfield Road. I would be more than happy to bring my electric bike if that's useful. And I will say they are more affordable. Concord is a thoroughly approachable town on a cargo bike. And I think that it does attract a lot of people. So it's a nice way to get people in the door. And it's fun to show a diversity of mobility options. So I just offer my bicycle up to you. I do have an Urban Arrow cargo bike that is my primary form of transportation. So it's totally doable.
Cool. Okay, well, I appropriately stand corrected. All right, lots of interesting stuff possible with the EV working group. Okay, the next one is plant a native seedling. This is an event the library ran last spring, where they had 150 native seedlings, 50 each of the sugar maple, tulip, and redbud. And the demand was greater than the supply. They were very excited about this, and very happy about it. Now, interestingly, other events they've told Doug and me have been poorly attended, and that's some great concern for them. And they're looking for ways to increase participation. And so they're happy to work with us both in terms of providing space for events, as well as promoting sustainability series events, and looking to us to do our own and additional promotion to reach a broader audience. The way I envision this is that this would basically be run by the library as they did it last year, but we would look to find a way to provide additional information to those people picking up trees to help tie together the idea of climate change and individual responsibility and what folks can do. Planting a seedling is one thing. There are many others. So hopefully those that might be drawn primarily for the gardening or agricultural perspective of this would get motivated by understanding additional climate action perspectives. Amanda?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this. So one of our Sustainable Concord goals for 2021, 2022 was to explore becoming a Tree City USA through the Arbor Foundation, which would create opportunity for us and that we would be eligible for grants and technical assistance. One of the key criteria to becoming a Tree City is that you celebrate Arbor Day. Uniquely, each town can set their own Arbor Day, which I did not know, through a proclamation by the select board. And so we haven't had a proclamation. And so if there is any history that anyone is aware of that would make a different day better for Concord to declare as Arbor Day, do let me know. I would just flag my only concern with this being on the 29th is that there's a lot of other potential events happening that week with Carrie Emanuel and then the climate challenge. And because the seedling event is so popular, thinking through, would that bring people in to do the climate challenge, knowing that they will take home a seedling and have their first step. So just something to consider of maybe bringing those two things together. And Brad, you mentioned having it at the library anyway. The only thing that I would say is we have to use Arbor Day in our advertisements for this particular event if we want to take it for credit for the Tree City USA application, which I think is totally doable. We just need to create a little bit of extra promotional materials that have that branding on it. But wanted to give a little bit of background and some context of how we could merge a few things.
Sounds good to me. You're right, if we hold the keynote speech after school vacation, yeah, that week becomes very busy. Brad, you have any thoughts or comments in terms of that timing?
You're right. You're right. There's no timing that can be perfect, of course, but you don't want to overwhelm it. And if you spill into May a little bit, it's not so bad.
Yeah, we could do, Kerry could do his speech, for example, on the 27th, have Arbor Day on the 29th, and then do the climate challenge the next week.
Well, I really liked what Amanda said about maybe doing it the same day and giving, this thing is just about giving out seedlings. That's a little award. That's an incentive to come. So
Yeah.
I think that idea was brilliant.
Okay,
And maybe we can get Laura to bring her electric bike, and that could be fun and inspiring too. And then there's like a few, the teams can check out these different things, these different fun things as they try to figure out what they're going to do.
yeah. That could be, things like that could help bring folks into the climate challenge. Again, not knowing whether we'll have too few or too many, it's probably best to err on the side of getting too many. Okay, I want to pick up the speed a little bit because we still have a couple important things to go over. This is pretty generic. I was prepared before I spoke with Gilda. And as you mentioned, Brad, maybe we can do something with Heat Smart Alliance. So this is still a blank page. I don't think we need to spend any more time on this here tonight unless anyone wants to. But the other thing I would like some update on is from Hanny on thoughts on promotion using Cooler Concord and how that platform could work for us.
Yeah. I had a chat with Brad. We went through the site. He prepared some mock-up, and Brad, I think I'm still able to log into Canary, so I think I can show this.
Good.
Right?
You
Yeah.
need to stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, all yours.
Here. Share. Should be able to see.
Yep.
Right. So this is sort of a mock-up of the events page, which could be accessible directly from outside. So you don't have to go through the whole sign-in process, but you can send people to that URL from outside, or you can send people independently to each one of these events. All right, so it can go to this one. You can also send people directly there. These pages are all accessible via URL, or if you want to use a QR code, that's something that it doesn't matter because it's really just a URL translation. So that's available already out of the box if you want. There are a bunch of things that Brad is still working on. I guess, Brad, your schedule is still on for some time around beginning February, right? The email registration process reminder without having to sign in through the whole process, right? Because I think right now you still have, if you sign in,
Right.
you need to go through the whole process of registering and everything. So sort of a little bit same as what Eventbrite does, or any of these event planning or event management type sites, where you can sign up and register for the event, and you get an email confirmation that you're in, and you keep track of who is in, who's out, and stuff like that. And there are some basic capabilities around finding out where people come from, mainly whatever is Google Analytics support. So it comes from, you can identify the browser, you can identify the IP address, you can identify whether they came from a link from outside, those kind of things. So that sort of opens up the question about where else could we have an electronic channeling event process, right? So you want to be able to put this in multiple places. So you create some kind of interest in people going to it, but also create also not only organic access, but also inorganic access.
So would that be, would some examples of that be perhaps newsletters from other
Well,
organizations?
you wanted electronic, right? Anything that's electronic. So yeah, anything that's like the Concord website or any other websites that may have interest to advertise this and send people to that link. Because that's sort of how you can, this is how when people do a search, it suddenly starts bubbling up.
Yeah,
Okay.
This-
hopefully we'll be able to get other organizations to promote us at a minimum through their newsletters, but also through social media and other organizations. I haven't spent a whole lot of time on that yet, but that's been what I've been imagining. Is we work with multiple channels, multiple outlets, provide them information and links, and the links go into Cooler Concord, just as you showed.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, I know Brad, you wanted to say something about it before. I mean, look, we have enough things in town where we can do cross promotions, and we need to try and leverage that right away, right? I mean,
Right.
that's the first thing.
Right.
I just wanted to make the point, especially if this meeting's recorded and in a public setting, this is a mock-up that I
Yeah,
made in a
yeah.
couple of minutes, and it is a non-copyrighted photo, but it is not a good photo. So don't think that there is an event necessarily at that date and time.
It is, I did say it was a mock-up, so I think.
Good.
Beginning, so, yeah. No, I mean, and then there is some branding that I know Amanda is working on and stuff like that, but I think, I mean, by and large, the stuff that we need to have is basic to be able to have a sort of an event registration mechanism and promotion. They're all feasible. There are a few things that Brad is working on, but they're not challenging from a technical standpoint.
Great. This is excellent. Any questions for Hanny or Brad, or any comments?
So it's a question for Amanda. Amanda, we're clear with the town to be able to cross promote to the Concord Mass website. Is that possible? Okay. Would be good.
Yeah, we should be good to go. And I didn't really receive much edits on the branding that I sent out, and so we should be good to go for that too. And I made them the 16:9 size, so it should fit nicely in here with the different versions that we want to use.
Yeah.
Okay, we probably need to test on a mobile device. Just to make sure it doesn't take up the whole page, right?
Oh, it'll work. Come on.
All right. Well, great stuff. Next up is the annual report. So I should say Janet created a draft, which I edited. Give me a moment. Let me find it here and I'll share it. All right, so where did my Zoom go? My board. Okay. So I don't know, I'm hoping that most of you, some of you had a chance to read over this. There is a slight modification here between a slight update from what I posted on the CSEC Google Drive. Let me ask if anyone, well, let me give everyone just a few minutes to read this. And let me scroll down so you can see the next page too. So let me give folks a little bit of time to read this, and then I'd like to see if anyone has any changes or suggested edits. Oops.
There is something missing in that I put in numbers that are not accurate for the number of homes that have been, they've had heat pumps installed this year. And also, I don't know how many electric vehicles there are.
Right, there's that. I'll just scroll down a little bit. Here's a bit about the electric vehicles. I spoke with Janice Setti about these numbers earlier today, and sounds like it's not straightforward to come up with reliable numbers on this. Might be possible, but it would take some work. Does anyone, Amanda or perhaps Matt, do either of you have any insights as to whether this data exists or how easy it would be to get?
I don't.
On this switching of homes from air source heat pumps, maybe just changing the wording to say how many people use the rebates, because that would be a number that Jan does have. And
That's a
it
good-
may not capture people that did it on their own, but just a slight change in wording. And I'm also working on getting the number of electric vehicles. And so I don't think that I don't think we'll have it in time for the annual report.
I could get you the more EV numbers. Those that are available, I think. And it's a snapshot in time.
So that would be the snapshot of how many EVs are registered in Concord?
Those are also rebate numbers, but they're fairly accurate. They're an underestimate.
So that's something you can get fairly easily?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
We have those somewhere.
all right, well,
I think, if you were wanting just a report on metrics, CMLP would probably, they had a rebate this year. Maybe they
Yeah,
would
you're right,
be able
yeah.
to say how many people participated in their rebate or how many people are enrolled in the, I'm blanking on the program name now, but the,
EV miles.
when you, EV miles, when you charge off peak, or, they also provide EV specialist support, maybe how many people had signed up for that type of support or reached out. So they have other interaction numbers. We just don't have this
yeah,
particular number.
well, maybe what I'll do is I'll ask Jan, Amanda, as you're suggesting, I can ask Jan for number of rebates and we report it that way. Maybe a little less interesting for folks rather than saying so many homes and so many EVs. But on the other hand, it gives an idea of the extent to which CMLP is supporting these efforts.
And I don't know how recently this has been done, but the CMLP has collected data of all the VIN numbers in Concord and translated them into, what are electric vehicles and counted those. And there are like quarterly reports that come out. I can't remember where the numbers actually come from. I think they come from excise data, excise tax. But
And
I
who
don't know
gets-
if that's been done, but that's how they figured out how many cars electric vehicles have been registered in Concord in the past, but I don't know how up to date any of that information is.
Yeah, I know that we've reported on it on the sustainability report that Kate was doing annually, like on the town's report. And I think the assessors do pull all of that data together. I think when I look at the timestamps of when that data is received, it's like May, June. So I just don't know that it's going to be available in time.
Well, this is kind of an interesting potential issue here. I don't know if we should report something that may end up being in conflict with data that, Amanda, you will end up publishing as part of the town's progress. For example, if we say here over 500 electric vehicles are now registered in Concord, and your number comes out different, that it's 437, one of us looks bad. So
I think it's not a bad thing to do the rebates. I think if people read this, it reminds them that there are rebates local for both the air source heat pumps and the EVs.
yeah. Okay. So Brad, if you could generate your numbers and see if you can judge them as to
Yes, see, let me write it down.
how reliable they are. And I'll talk to Jan about rebates and see if we can't use that with the EV numbers Brad might come up with. Any other comments or suggestions or edits to this draft?
Eric has his hand up.
Yeah, I see that. Eric, go ahead.
Hi,
and introduce
guys.
yourself, please.
I should introduce myself. I haven't been to a meeting in a while. I used to come frequently. Eric Reinhardt, 9 Hayward Mill Circle, Concord. Someone was mentioning about the rebates, and my eye was attracted to that topic as well. And I was wondering, would it be appropriate or helpful to, if you have a number that you can quote for how much incentive money was leveraged to achieve these results? It might be interesting to quote that number in here. It strikes me that people would read this and say, well, that's nice for them, they can afford it. But if you float the idea that there's cash flowing around to incentivize this sort of action, people might perk their ears up.
Right. That's a very good point. I'll talk to Jan about that as well. Amanda?
I had mentioned this to you, Jerry, but one version I saw pointed out the support of the bulk food returnable containers. So
Yeah.
maybe adding a line in about that.
I did add that in. That's
Okay.
where is that? It's here.
Okay.
It's
The other thing I wondered was about adding anything about Concord Heat's Electric, and then maybe a simple pointing towards, I mean, you did do work on the Cooler Concord series in 2021, and maybe you could say, check out our website for event details in 2022, just a little bit of promo, free promotion for people.
Right. That's very good. Let me make a note to myself. So you mentioned a couple things. The second one was adding some comments on the fact we started working on the sustainability series. What was the prior suggestion?
Maybe saying something about Concord Heat's Electric,
Yeah.
and coordinating with that group.
Right. Okay. Okay, good. In the interest of time, I'm not going to do that online here. Any other suggestions, comments, edits? Okay, Matt, let me ask you a procedural question here. Does the committee need to vote to approve this report?
No,
Okay, all right. So then I will take the edits suggested. I will make some edits to this and then provide that, Amanda, I guess, to you. Or who, I'm not sure who to send it to, but I'll send it to the appropriate person. And I think the deadline is sometime next week, but I'll try and get to that right away, perhaps tomorrow. Okay,
I think it goes to Aaron Stevens.
yeah, right, that's right. Okay, so we have the next agenda item, which is to review another document. Let me open that up. And that's this. So in anticipation of the PV at CMS coming up in discussion during next week's special town meeting. I put together a short draft that you see here to state the committee's view on PV at the middle school. My thinking here is that this is a sort of a back pocket item to have available if the discussion or if any discussion or questions come up about sustainability or PV with regards to the school. It was a big topic apparently at the hearing last month. So I wanted to be prepared just in case. So I'd like folks to read this and see if they're comfortable with it, if this represents their views. And if not, then let's figure out what our consensus here is.
Just a question, is the meeting in person or is the meeting on Zoom? The town meeting?
it's
I think
in person
Wow.
by state law.
You mean Congress can vote remotely, but not Concord?
That's right.
That's fascinating.
Jerry, can you make the text a bit bigger so it's easier to read?
Yes.
I mean, I think you're going to have a big challenge with people attending. I mean, I can tell you, this is like mind-boggling given what's going on right now.
And there are discussions underway about other, possible things that we could do. So I don't know what the resolution is, but I do know that there are discussions.
Sure, can you,
Brad?
I don't know if it belongs in here or not, but can you remind us approximately what size we're talking about for the middle school in terms of kW or megawatt?
1 megawatt.
One. Wow. So even with this, we still have a long ways to go.
Yes.
Mhm.
Brad?
Yes, I think the maximum is like 1.2 megawatts. There is an article being discussed, potential town meeting article. I've been talking to Charlie Parker a little bit about that to see if to urge the town or to have the town urged CMLP to develop an action plan for solar, not just on this site, but on all the sites to get to the goal that you mentioned, the 20 megawatt goal by 2030. This is just being hatched and discussed, but it would be something to put before CSEC, get some input and support on that.
Yeah, I've had some conversations with Charlie as well. But I'm a little behind in terms of the latest thinking on that. But nonetheless, you're right. It would be good to get that in front of CSEC. But for now, this is, I guess, my approach to put the CMS portion of it before CSEC, so to speak.
Yeah.
So this is what, if there is a discussion on PV at CMS during the special town meeting, and it is appropriate to make comments, this is the comment that I would plan to make. And I wanted to just make sure that this was in line with everyone's individual and collective feelings on the topic.
I like it.
Okay, good. And any other comments? So Matt, another similar point of order question here. Does the committee need to vote on this so that I am prepared to represent CSEC on this? Or is the ad hoc discussion we're having sufficient?
That's sufficient because, I mean, basically just designate someone, that will speak on behalf of the board. You've got this statement, so I think you're okay.
Okay.
I mean, everyone's commented that there hasn't been a debate, so.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, next item is the liaison reports. Doug is not here, and the last CAB meeting was a while ago, and I don't have anything to report on that. As Amanda commented, the next CAB meeting is next week. Janet, is there anything you want to add regarding the EV working group beyond what we've already discussed?
I think we've already discussed everything.
Okay, great. We have a moment for any additional public comments. We do have a couple guests this week, so I want to give you opportunity to comment if there's anything more you would like to comment on. Laura, please go ahead.
Laura Davis, 330 Garfield Road. This is just in relation to this statement that you still have up. As somebody who's been following the CMS process for a long time, I think that it might just be worthwhile to add a sentence or two giving a little bit of context to where we are and how we got there. Just in terms of like I think that there may be some confusion at town meeting. At least I'm concerned that there might be some confusion at town meeting about whether we're voting on money for solar right now. And so it might just be worthwhile to give a little bit of context so people understand that you support that CMS, that CMLP is working forward. I don't know how to phrase it, but there just may need to be a little bit more context given for people who haven't been following this as closely as I'm sure we all have.
So are you suggesting a comment related to the net zero ready aspect?
Right. It might be worthwhile to just parse out, like today at town meeting, we are voting on a net zero school that's going to replace 2 schools that are currently heated with fossil fuels, and there's value in that, and we want to move forward with that. And then this solar thing is sort of separate, and it's going to come up later, and it just might be worthwhile to separate it for voters so they know that they're not voting on PV at that meeting, because it might set expectations inappropriately, thinking that they've already voted on something, just like we're in the weeds. So just zoom out a little bit and try to explain it to your neighbor who has no idea we're building a new middle school.
Got it.
Sorry. I mean, I appreciate what Laura is saying, and I think it's a very good point, because I think then the next question becomes, okay, what happens next? Right? You vote for the school, but you haven't voted for the energy plan. What happens next? And I think it opened up big Pandora box, I think, potentially.
So Hanny, you're suggesting I do add,
I think it needs to be clarified. I think the point
Yeah.
is very right. I agree with the point. It makes a lot of sense. So people understand that it's not over, it's not done, right? That's
Right.
one part. That's the school building. There's still more to come.
good, that, those points make sense to me too, and I'll do that. Okay. Any other comments from anybody? Brad? looked
I
like
just have a question for one of your committee members who's been living on ground zero of.
Oh, that's
climate,
right.
How things are in Niger.
Yes.
And are you making progress there, Mr. Shatton?
Where to begin? Well, we're starting, it's been fascinating to jump into a first world conversation after living in the third world, where only 15% of the people have electricity. Right outside my house, people live in a grass hut with no running water, no sanitation, no electricity, and this is in the capital city. So, I mean, it's just interesting that our planet has such diversity in how people live. They have a lot of problems there. And I'm working on forming a nonprofit in Niger called the Sahel Solar Academy to teach people how to install solar panels. I don't know anything about installing them, but I know enough to form a nonprofit over there. I'm construction manager at our embassy to put a new 1 megawatt energy storage system in that runs off of solar at the brand new embassy. And I have a construction project at the American International School, a security project that they needed help on. And that's not my background, but very few people want to go live in this place. So they try to find anybody who's willing to help out. So I'm going to be there for another 3 to 4 months, but I definitely want to get back involved with CSEC. It's exciting to see all the progress that's been made. And it's a daunting task for us all, everywhere on the planet. They're burning firewood for cooking there. So they have a long way to go.
Well, thanks for the update. And thanks too for the interesting projects, important projects you're working on there. What do you do in your free time?
Well, it's taken a while to get things going. So I'm a good house husband in my spare time.
Well, then you indeed have your hands full.
Yes.
Well, it's great to have you back.
Well, it's good seeing everyone. Everyone looks great, and it's good to be back even for a short period of time. I'm
However
heading out
momentarily.
soon, yeah.
Okay, Eric, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm really thrilled to hear about the sustainability series, and Carrie Emmanuel is a real rock star. Anybody who hasn't seen him can find him all over YouTube, or he seems to be the default speaker whenever NPR has a climate question. So I think we would be very fortunate to have him at an event. Kudos, go team.
Well, thank you, Janet, for arranging this. I'm excited too. Okay, one last time around the horn. Any other comments, questions from anybody? Great. Well, thank you all for your diligent work. I think we're making great progress. We still have quite a ways to go to pull all this off, but I'm getting more excited as the days go by and we get closer to it and things get fleshed out, and there's much more of that to come. I'll entertain the motion to adjourn.
I'll
Anybody?
move to adjourn.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone interested enough to second?
Second.
Okay, I was thinking everyone is enjoying this so much, we want to stay longer. All in favor of adjourning tonight, raise your hand. I see everyone up. It's unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Stay warm. Let's all be in
Night.
touch.
Thank you.
Ta-da.
Bye-bye.
And everybody.